After spending some time in Equilibrium, I've managed to get my hands on its exotic, Heirloom, and to be quite honest, I'm pretty underwhelmed by it. It's certainly a unique weapon and one that offers some interesting synergies, but overall for me, it's defined by its slow, clunky playstyle. I did still want to put this video together though, since Heirloom was a bit disappointing in terms of its performance, but I thought it was really fun to build around, even if it wasn't as fun to play with. Now, I won't keep you too long on this one, so I'll just go over the build so you can see what I was using, and I'll give you some more of my thoughts afterwards. If you're unfamiliar with Heirloom, it's a special ammo heat weapon that fires exploding bolts, which are strong against unstopped champions. When you're aiming down sights, you can charge up your shots to a maximum of 3 levels, with each level dealing more damage and causing a larger explosion. When you get the catalyst, Heirloom's shots will also scorch enemies at charge level 2 or 3, and Heirloom will also deal 30% increased damage to scorched targets. These charged shots are pretty cool and they deal a good chunk of damage, but for my money, the catalyst is the coolest part of Heirloom. I like that it gives you a great incentive to build really heavily into Scorch, which complements Heirloom's strengths and vice versa. An example, using Hellion is a great way to scorch multiple targets from range, which will boost Heirloom's damage, and landing those huge scorching shots from Heirloom will give you extra ability energy back through things like Ember of Searing or Ember of Singeing. Solar is at its most fun for me when I'm balancing all of these buffs and effects, and Heirloom does a great job working with everything Solar has to offer. With that in mind, I went with Yunoya as my exotic armor of choice, as it can spread around a lot of Scorch if you stay at the right distance to cause its shrapnel. Alongside Hellion, I went with Heat Rises as my second aspect, which is great for creating that space to get Yunoya rolling, and flying through the air is the perfect chance to charge up those high level shots. Another great part of Heat Rises is that pairing it with Phoenix Dive, whenever you have Heat Rises active and you use your dive, you'll get ×2 restoration and you'll scorch targets around you when you land. This not only adds another scorching option itself, but accessing restoration frees up your grenade slot, and it means you don't need to spend fragment slots to gain it through fire sprites. As a result, I think you could probably go with whatever grenade you'd prefer for this build, but I ended up using a firebolt since it's great to scorch several targets in a pinch, and it has the shortest cooldown. For my fragments, I went with Ember of Empyrean and Ember of Solace to maintain my buffs, as well as Ember of Torches to activate Radiant. Finally, Ember of Singeing gets me class energy back when I scorch targets, so I can always have a Hellion up, as well as Phoenix Dive to activate Restoration. For my armor set, I went with Thriving Survivor, as Heirloom counts as a heat weapon and can activate the increased weapon and grenade stat you get from the set bonus Room Clearing. Since Heirloom's explosions can net you some easy multi-kills, this will not only boost Heirloom's damage, but it'll also boost Hellion's damage, which is fantastic. The stat bump from Thriving Survivor is 40 points to each stat, which over 100 is a 25.6% increase to grenade damage and a 5.9% increase to weapon damage. With such a huge stat bump, I was able to effectively run a max of 200 stats in both grenade and weapons, as I got my weapons to 160 and my grenades up to 120 with 2 fonts, landing them at 160 with armor charges. Throw on 2 Solar Surges on top for that extra 17% damage, and you're absolutely cooking. There unfortunately isn't much in the way of artifact mods this season that work with Solar, so I went with all of the general use mods like Expert Handling and the kinetic mods like Kinetic Rupture for my primary. I was rocking an Everburning Glitz with Ancillary Ordnance, so anytime I killed a scorched target with Glitz, I'd send off a rocket, and as I was getting elemental multi-kills with Heirloom, I'd always have those 5 extra rockets stocked up for later. So the idea for this one is to start off the fight consuming your grenade to activate Heat Rises, and using your Phoenix Dive to summon a Hellion and start Restoration. With all the buffs going, head into the air, keeping far enough away for Yunoya to split your Hellion and spread as much Scorch as possible. As the Scorch gets spread and ignitions start going off, you can glide around to avoid enemy fire as you charge up Heirloom and rain down those huge explosions, focusing on enemies tagged by Hellion. As you take down enemies with Heirloom, you'll activate Room Clearing to boost your stats, and whenever you make some orbs, you can Phoenix Dive on top of them to get your armor charges going and reset the cycle. As I mentioned up top, I really like what Heirloom offers in terms of its build crafting, as this is a very different kind of build for me, and it was really fun to experiment with. I almost never use Heat Rises, as generally speaking it's not quite the playstyle I'm looking for, but its airtime is perfect for charging up Heirloom, and getting ×2 restoration into the mix with it is incredible. Each part of the build feeds back into each other through Scorch, which will help maintain buffs, increase Heirloom's damage, up your ability regen, and boost your stats through Thriving Survivor. It's a well-rounded build that does good damage, has great survivability and high ability uptime, time, but somehow in the end it just kind of doesn't come together for me. While making the build was a blast and it's awesome to see it in action when it's all rolling, for me Heirloom is completely taken out at the knees by how incredibly clunky it is to use. The charge time feels extremely slow, and when you do fire off one of those maxed out shots, it kind of feels like it just does okay damage, but it doesn't quite feel like enough to justify how long it takes. It's hard to find the sweet spot with Heirloom, as oftentimes the base shot pretty much does nothing, and it sometimes even struggles to kill a red bar. Level 1 applies Scorch, but it doesn't increase the explosion size, and then level 2 and level 3 basically feel the same as each other. The differences in charge levels aren't distinct enough to where I would know, okay, I should use a level 2 here or a level 3, and it made Heirloom feel rather unintuitive in combat. With the nature of heat weapons as well, Heirloom can easily overheat, which becomes a huge issue as just aiming down sights will generate heat, meaning you can fire no more than 2 charged shots before needing to vent. The problem for me was when I was swapping weapons in a fight, I'd often pull out Heirloom to try to send off a shot just for it to overheat on me and I'd get caught in a forced vent. Even trying to use it efficiently, where I would do 2 full charge shots back to back and do a perfect vent right after, it just felt like the whole process took really long. It felt like I'd spend 2 or 3 seconds staring down the sights, a split second to fire, maybe another few seconds for the next shot, and then I'd vent the weapon just to go right back to doing it all over again. While I do get the appeal of Heirloom as this sort of slow, high damaging cannon, I just find it feels absolutely sluggish to use. It also feels pretty bad on ammo to me, as it can only hold 20 shots, which seems like it would be alright, but on ultimate difficulty, most enemies above a red bar or a low tier yellow bar would need 2 shots to kill. As you can see in this clip, even against a Scorched Knight with a full level 3 charge, I don't one-shot it. This was once again a pain with how tedious and slow it was to take out these levels of enemies, but it again also drained those 20 shots of reserves really quickly. These gripes all lead me to my biggest frustration with Heirloom, which is that I just don't know what place it wants to be in or what role it's trying to fill. It's clearly meant to be a high damage option, but using it as a weapon to swap to for burst feels really bad because of the charge time and the vent, and it just can't keep up with something like a rocket pulse for sustained damage. It's not like an auto-loading GL, an example, or even a fusion rifle where you can swap to it for a kill and still have some shots left over. If you're lucky, you can swap to it, do 1 shot, swap off, and maybe do 1 more shot before you'd have to vent. Otherwise, you're venting between shots or trying to do the perfect vent, which again just kind of feels really bad to pull out your special, charge it up for a few seconds, send off a shot that maybe kills like 3 or 4 enemies, and then be forced to reload it before you shoot again or swap off. Since it's a special weapon, it also doesn't do an insane level of damage, which is okay and probably how it should be, but Heirloom is completely outpaced by options like Mint Retrograde, which is far more versatile and doesn't require an exotic slot. As you can see in this clip, Mint with no damage perk going does 825 damage with no precision hits, and Heirloom at max charge against a scorched target deals 954 damage. Now, I'm not trying to say it needs a damage or ammo buff, as I'm far less concerned with its damage output than I am with how unfun it is to work around. I wouldn't mind the level of damage it does, especially with the solar synergy it has, if it just felt fluid to use, but it doesn't. Special weapons for me often have very specific, important use cases in a build, with examples like an auto-loading mountaintop being great for damage bursts, Mint Retrograde being great for sustained damage, and Lionfish being great for its chill clip utility. In higher difficulty content, you need some sort of option between primary and heavy weapons to deal with majors or even champions that your primary can't handle and your heavy doesn't really need to. Special weapons end up filling a pretty wide gap in terms of their uses, and I just don't know where Heirloom fits in within it. In each category of specials, be it burst or swap damage, high damage or utility, there's countless legendary weapons I would prefer to use over Heirloom that'll either outperform it or just be a lot more fun to use. Overall, for me, Heirloom is just not really worth its effort, and while it was fun to build around, I don't find it much fun to use. Although I had rather high hopes for Heirloom, and it's an extremely unique weapon, it's really just not for me. But if you give this build a try, I hope it fits for you. With that all being said, thank you so much for watching, hope you enjoyed the video. There's a dim link down below if you want to give this exact build a try, or if you want to use it as the base for your own spin on it. Subscribe to the channel to keep an eye out for more videos soon, and let me know in the comments what you think of Heirloom.